The instruments said he was safe. The bodies said otherwise. It's 3:30 in the morning in Souderton, Pennsylvania. Inside a quiet suburban home, a man who sat across from a Veterans Affairs psychiatrist 7 days earlier and was cleared of any suicidal or homicidal ideation is moving through the dark with a .40 caliber Heckler & Koch, a 9mm Beretta, and a knife. The official notes from that December 8th evaluation said nothing remarkable. No red flags, no intent. 7 days later, the same man is systematically erasing his ex-wife's entire bloodline, sister, brother-in-law, 14-year-old niece, while the 17-year-old nephew fights for his life under a blade and blunt trauma that will leave a gaping skull fracture. How does a man walk out of a mental health appointment with a clean bill of psychological health, and then, inside of 90 minutes, turn 3 family homes into crime scenes? That is the question that never really left Montgomery County. What follows is not the story of a simple domestic dispute that got out of hand. It is the story of a man who had already remarried, already fathered a new child, already filed an emergency custody petition, and still decided the only permanent solution was the complete removal of the opposing family tree. Bradley William Stone did not kill in a blind rage. He killed in sequence. First, the sister's house, then the mother and grandmother's house, then, finally, the ex-wife herself. The 2 little girls, his own daughters, were removed from the last seen alive, driven away in the dark, and dropped off safely at a neighbor's house in Pennsburg like nothing more than an inconvenient errand. That order is not random. It is the targeting of a support system. In familicide cases driven by custody, the perpetrator often views the extended family as the real enemy, the ones who will testify, the ones who will shelter the children, the ones who will keep the legal fight alive, even after the primary target is gone. Stone neutralized them first. The sister and her husband were the immediate emotional and logistical backbone for Nicole Hill. Their daughter, Nina, 14 years old, received 12 stab wounds to the head and an incision across the back of the neck. That level of overkill on a child is not incidental. It is the destruction of the next generation of witnesses and support. The 17-year-old, Anthony, survived significant cutting injuries and blunt force trauma. When he woke up in the trauma center, he can speak, but he could not remember the attack. Memory gaps like that are common after severe head trauma. Yet they also leave the only living adult male relative of the victims unable to provide a full narrative. Convenient if you're the one who left him alive. Stone then moved to Lansdale. Joanna Hill and Patricia Hill, mother and grandmother, were killed around 4:25 a.m. One was shot near the right eye and had her throat slashed. The other was shot in the head after a defensive wound to the forearm. Again, the combination of gun and blade, close range, personal. And then Lower Salford Township, Nicole Hill, the final target. Neighbors heard shouting and multiple gunshots. They looked out and saw Stone walking his 2 young daughters to the car. When they asked if everything was all right, he answered calm as a man late for work. "She's hurt pretty bad. We've got to leave." He left the .40 caliber Heckler & Koch at that scene. He drove the girls to safety. He disappeared into the early morning. That 90-minute window is the heart of the tradecraft. 3 locations, multiple weapons, no prolonged confrontation that drew police while he was still active. He finished the list, secured the children, and vanished before the first body was even discovered. The Souderton scene wasn't found until nearly 8 a.m. By then, Stone had already been free for hours. Now look at the man himself. Bradley Stone enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserve in 2002 as a meteorologist. He deployed to Iraq for less than 3 months in 2008 with an artillery battalion. He left service later that year as a sergeant and remained on individual ready reserve until 2011. There were reports of combat-related physical injuries and a claimed diagnosis of PTSD. Yet the official record from the VA evaluation on December 8th showed no suicidal or homicidal ideation. No evidence has ever publicly confirmed a formal PTSD diagnosis tied to the killings. What we do know is a pattern of alcohol-related crashes: 2001, 2004, and a 2013 guilty plea for drunken driving that put him in a veterans rehabilitation program. We know a marriage to Nicole Hill in 2004, divorce finalized in 2012, and a bitter custody fight that intensified after she sought treatment for drug issues. We know Stone had remarried in 2013 and had a new child. And we know that on December 5th, he filed an emergency custody petition. Nicole filed a counterclaim 4 days later. 10 days after that, 6 people were dead. The psychological contradiction is almost surgical. A man who has already started a second family still feels the need to annihilate the first family's adult support structure. That is not simple jealousy. That is control carried to its absolute end. The children of the first marriage are spared and delivered to safety because they are still his property in his mind. Everyone else who could influence those children or challenge his narrative is removed. There is a particular kind of genetic egotism at work here. The bloodline that is his is protected. The bloodline that is not is extinguished. The fact that he used both firearms and a knife suggests he wanted the option of silence when silence was tactically useful, and the speed of a gun when time mattered. The overkill on the 14-year-old girl suggests something beyond tactical necessity, something closer to rage at the idea that any part of that family would continue. Then comes the end of the manhunt. Police searched. Helicopters with infrared, K-9 units, schools closed. A reported carjacking attempt in Doylestown that later did not hold up. On December 16th, half a mile from his own home in Pennsburg, Stone was found dead in the woods. Near him, a machete and a double-bladed black axe, both blood-coated, and several pill bottles. Early statements mentioned self-inflicted cutting wounds to the midsection. The autopsy told a different story. A 7-centimeter stab wound to the upper thigh, 3 superficial cuts to the leg and hip, 10 scratches on the face and neck. No fatal gunshot. The cause of death was a combination of trazodone, its metabolite MCPP, and risperidone, an antidepressant and an antipsychotic. Ruled a suicide by overdose. So the man who cleared a psychiatric evaluation with no ideation of harm to self or others dies by intentional overdose of psychiatric medication in the woods, after leaving a trail of blade and gun violence across 3 houses. The VA announced a comprehensive review of his care. Condolences were issued. The custody case died with the parties. Anthony Flick was discharged from the hospital on December 22nd, still without full memory of the night his family was destroyed. What remains is the quiet question that official reports never fully answer. When a man can sit in a clinician's office, present as stable, walk out, purchase or already possess the weapons, plan a 3-location sequence, execute it before dawn, protect his own children, and then choose a pharmacological exit rather than a final confrontation with police. What exactly was being measured in that evaluation? And what, in the days between the clean bill of health and the first door he kicked in, was happening inside the mind that the instruments failed to see? The instruments said he was safe. The bodies said otherwise. And somewhere between those 2 statements is the part of this case that still sits in the dark, unanswered.